So to stop body snatchers, they came up with a brilliant idea of a coffin torpedo to put an end to robbing attempts. They were definitely oddities made to make money off of widespread fear about body snatching, which the Anatomy Murders also gets into that, like making money off of people's fear of this problem.
We do that today.
What? Yeah, I don't.
Not we, the big we.
I'm like, what are you doing, Jess?
I had one drink tonight.
Oh my god, do we have to stop doing happy hour before this?
No.
How do we make money off of the fear of body snatching?
Not body snatching directly, but like there's definitely like the government uses fear and like just makes money off of it.
Okay.
Okay. It's out there.
I agree. Okay.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to perform an autopsy?
Ever wanted to know how accurate your favorite crime drama is?
If you're brave enough,
Join us inside the morgue. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Morgue, the podcast that gives you everything forensics related and more, which you'll find out in this episode. We are your hosts and pathology duo, Jess and Alice. And before we get started into this crazy topic, I just want to shout out Dylan, our producer here at YUNKJunk. Dylan, where can the people find you?
Simple way to find me, easiest, fastest way is by email. Email me, Dylan at YUNKJunk.com. And if you want to start a podcast and you want to look good doing it, like Alice and Jess here, hit me up and we'll make it happen.
Amazing. So we've talked about this before. We live nothing more than Victorian era medicine. And back in the 1880s, it was like a free-for-all, and grave robbing was at its peak and was a real problem. And Dylan, this is my question for you. Mm-hmm. If I say the words Coffin Torpedoes, what do you think that is?
That sounds like a cool name for like a racing horse or something like that. I don't know. Like I don't really.
Does it?
Or maybe I don't know. Maybe some like punk band that you'd see in a basement.
I was just gonna say it's a good answer. It's a good band name.
It's like maybe
a good like death metal band.
Okay, you know. But I'm interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you piqued my curiosity.
That's so Costa's answer when I asked him what he thought a coffin torpedo was. He thought it was like it was honestly it was more insane than it actually is. He thought it was like people shooting bodies out of submarines. And I'm like, no, but that's a crazy answer. So to stop body snatchers, they came up with a brilliant idea of a coffin torpedo to put an end to robbing attempts. It's such an insane design and concept that we had to talk about it today for our mini episode. And let's get into everything we know
about coffin torpedoes,
about body snatching and coffin torpedoes. It's what they were advertised at. It was just like coffin torpedoes.
We'll get into some of the advertisements, and we'll definitely post this on our Instagram. Some of the actual advertisements that were back in the 1880s.
Yeah, we're gonna quote them.
People were like, "Yeah, you want this?
Yeah, you want this for your loved one." I have to read some of our texts that we went back and forth about when I found out this was a thing. You were the first person I texted. I'm like, we're talking about this.
Yeah. So we got this information before we get started. We got it all from an Atlas Obscura article titled Coffin Torpedoes. So if you're interested and want to learn more about it, definitely go over there. There's also probably a bunch of other articles, but we just did this specific one for now. So on the night of January 17th, 1881, a would-be body snatcher by the name of Dipper was killed by a blast in Mount Vernon, Ohio cemetery. The attempted grave robbery was a 3-man operation. The explosion broke the leg of the second thief. The third, tasked with keeping watch, was allegedly left unscathed and hoisted the wounded friend into a sleigh. This is another win for Coffin Torpedoes.
Torpedoes.
Oh, yeah.
Doing work.
Keeping the dead buried.
This was does it though? Because it causes an explosion. And then
it causes more issues than you think.
How?
Who thought of this and was like, yes, we need it?
Okay, grave. 6 feet.
Torpedo.
Where's the torpedo above it? And then how much exposed ground is there after? Does it make... Okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking of all this now. Like, first round of body snatchers goes in.
Yeah.
Tries to steal the body. Coffin torpedo. But
Then another round of robbers just go and
then
after
the
the
hole is there
explosion,
already because the coffin torpedo made a
it
hole.
did its job. It made it easier.
Do you need a second torpedo? Sorry.
There's a backup torpedo.
Backup torpedo.
So keeping the dead buried was definitely a major concern back in 19th century America.
Yeah.
As med students and schools were proliferated after the Civil War, the field grew increasingly tied to the study of anatomy and the practice of dissection. Professors needed bodies for these young doctors to like learn on, and the pool of legally available corpses, which was like executed criminals and like people who donated their bodies, this was very small.
Yeah,
they
not
had
a
a
lot of-
very small pool of people willing and able to do this.
Yeah, not a lot of people donated their
Yeah.
bodies willingly back then
Mhm.
because it was taboo, more taboo than it
Yeah.
even is now. Like, I feel like there's still, like, some people still feel taboo about it, but we
But
know
I feel
more
like
about
it's
it
definitely
now.
come such a
Yeah,
long
it's
way
come
today.
so long. We don't need coffin torpedoes anymore.
I don't know. Maybe we should bring them back. So we enter the freelance body snatchers industry. They were dispatched to digging up graves.
Yeah.
So by the late 1800s, the illicit body trade was flourishing, and salacious accounts of grave robberies peppered local papers across the country.
So there were at least 12 body snatching scandals reported in 1879, including that of Ohio Congressman John Scott Harrison, the son of the 9th United States President, William Henry Harrison. Harrison's body was found at the University of Cincinnati, and his remains were ultimately returned to the family tomb. That's insane because
He's a president.
he's the son of a president. He's a congressman. But like he had to be wealthy and well known, and like in the book The Anatomy Murders, which talks about a lot of this as well as the Burke and Hare case and how this all came about and how they got away with it for so long because everybody turned a blind eye to body snatching.
Because
And
they needed these bodies so bad.
that's what they assumed that they were doing for a while, that it was just body snatching, even though it's terrible too. But statistically, it was a lot of people who were poorer had like their loved ones body snatched because they couldn't afford crazy contraptions like coffin torpedoes, or they even had like cages they would put on top of tombs, or they were able to hire people to guard the grave.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that
there's a huge gap
someone who's
in-
huge and well known and their body was found at a university. Like nobody was safe.
Yeah,
but
this like started a huge like gap in like who was wealthy and who wasn't.
Exactly. There was a huge disparity in what communities were affected by body snatching, because certain people could afford to protect their loved ones' bodies and certain people couldn't. And the book Anatomy Murders really gets into it, and it's fascinating.
When
and like class disparity, it's insane.
When I first brought Coffin Torpedoes up to Dom, I was telling him about it, and he was like, well, but what about the cages? And I was like, what are you talking about? And Dom was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I knew about the cages. I had no idea about coffin torpedoes until very recently. So, capitalizing on the public's funeral anxiety, inventors got to work, and the solution? Explosives. Philip K. Clover, a Columbus, Ohio artist, patented the early coffin torpedo in 1878. Clover's instrument functioned like a small shotgun secured inside the coffin lid.
It's in the coffin. Doesn't it also explode the body?
It had to. This is insane.
Are you just blowing somebody
like, I didn't think about
thinking that you're protecting them and you kill them again?
Wild. So it was in the coffin lid in order to, quote, prevent the unauthorized resurrection of dead bodies, as the inventor put it. If someone tried to remove the buried body, the torpedo would fire out a lethal blast of lead balls with the lid when the lid was like tried to pried open.
It would explode up.
So then, yeah, the body's just exposed after that.
So
Who cleans up
theoretically,
after
another
this?
group of grave robbers could come and be like, hey, thanks for doing this for us. We'll take it from here.
But wait, no, because then the body they want like pristine bodies. If there's a shotgun
if
blast.
This body is now exploded. They have nothing.
But maybe the shotgun blast doesn't affect the person in the coffin. But
It's
still.
just so confusing. How? I need to know how this. I need a video.
Mythbusters needs to make a video. So another person from Ohio, former Circleville probate judge Thomas N. Howell, patented a grave torpedo of his own on December 20th, 1881. And unlike the original Clover torpedo, this one was a shell buried above the coffin, but wired to it. So this one's a little further up. So this works like a landmine. That's what I was originally picturing. I'm like, okay, the grave is 6 feet deep. There's a landmine like 3 feet. And it would detonate when the thieves ran into the wiring.
So they were digging, and then they hit the wire. Boom. So, quote, this is a literal, like,
this is the ad.
This is an ad for what they used back then. I quote, "Sleep well, sweet angel, let no fears of ghouls disturb thy rest, for above thy shrouded form lies a torpedo." I can't even do this with a straight face.
It gets worse. It gets worse, everyone. I'm looking at it on the screen.
"Ready to make minced meat of anyone who attempts to convoy you to the pickling vat."
Pickling vat.
This is an advertisement for the Howell torpedo.
So this is the landmine.
This is the landmine one.
Landmine one.
I want this on my grave.
I want this on my grave. I said this to Costa when I showed it to him. I want this on my grave. And he's like, "You want a coffin torpedo?" I was like, "No, I want the threat of a coffin torpedo."
I want people to think I'm dangerous.
I don't want an actual coffin torpedo. I want people to wonder, like, is she crazy? And I don't even want to be buried. I don't even want to be buried.
My body's not there.
My body's not there. But is there a torpedo?
I guess I'm going to have to find out.
You don't know. Are you? Are you? I'm not even dead yet. I just have a grave. I'm watching behind the tree, just like waiting.
We're faking our deaths to see who would come and try.
Who would come and try it.
So it's a period in which people were very devoted. They devoted a considerable portion of their savings to funerals and the development of the funeral industry around that.
Yeah.
For a lot of working people, if you saved any money at all, like all of that would go to your funeral expenses for either you or your family.
That's wild.
People felt that they were desperately trying and like desperately important to have a decent burial.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do the same today.
Yeah. Everyone deserves to live as how they want to live and be able to be put to rest how they want to be and how their loved ones want them to be put to rest.
So the lore of coffin torpedoes and graves loaded with them spread in patent catalogs and newsprints. A particularly gossipy 1899 issue of the Topeka State Journal claimed the late Mrs. W.C. Whitney's grave was, quote, "sown with powerful torpedoes," end quote, and fiercely guarded by watchmen at all hours. The report referenced the case at A.T. Stewart, a Gilded Age tycoon, whose body was taken from its grave in 1878 and held for ransom. And there's no secret about the torpedoes, the journal claimed. All of the village talks of them. Despite all the yellow rag chatter about graveyard artillery, there is little to suggest coffin torpedoes were widely manufactured or commercially successful.
This is all just so insane. Did anybody really have torpedoes, or was it all just
a threat? Like you.
Well, no, the story from
maybe there was just like a few, and they were like, okay, we'll do a few, test it out. People will go, and like it will make a commotion.
And then
people will be like, oh my god,
it.
I can't rob this grave with. There's a freaking torpedo.
You know. This is so bad. You know how people have outside their houses, like, this house is protected by like AT security.
Beware of dog.
This grave is protected by coffin torpedoes.
I'm just gonna I have a dog, but what if I didn't have a dog? I'd be like, beware of dog. It's a threat. It's just a threat.
Just sleep well, sweet angel. Let no fears of ghouls disturb thy rest. For above thy shrouded form is a coffin torpedo.
Ready to make minced meat.
That's what I want. That's all I want on my grave. I don't want it to happen. I don't want anybody to be turned to mincemeat. I just want the threat.
I just want
a little threatening thing on my tombstone.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So for the most part, these torpedoes seem to have been used very little. So, definition-wise, I feel like torpedo is the wrong word.
I feel like it's the right word.
Why?
Because
Explain it to me. What is a torpedo? Tell me.
It's a debate now. If
Counterpoint.
you're trying to really get people to stop robbing graves, you have to use like the harsher words, like the more threatening words. Torpedo. I don't want to mess with a freaking torpedo.
Yeah. Because like when I said torpedo to Costa, that's what made him think it had to be like a submarine thing, like an under.
just
like,
so funny to
and
think
he's
about.
like, oh, were they like shooting bodies out of the water? I'm like, no. Now I feel like mine isn't as interesting.
Hey, maybe it should have been called like coffin landmines.
That's
not
you're right.
torpedo.
Coffin torpedo though, because that's what drew us into it. Is that it was
Mhm.
called a coffin torpedo. It's just a flashier, crazier name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. So they were definitely oddities made to make money off of widespread fear about body snatching, which the Anatomy Murders also gets into that, like making
Mhm.
money off of people's fear of this problem instead of
we do that today.
what? Yeah, I don't.
Not we, the big we.
I'm like, what are you doing, Jess? God, you need to come to the studio more. This is great. The big we.
I had one drink tonight.
Oh my god,
Oh my
do we have to
gosh.
stop doing happy hour before this?
No.
Okay. Wait. How do we make money off of the fear of body snatching?
Not body snatching directly, but like there's definitely like the government uses fear and like just makes money off of it.
Okay. Okay.
It's out there.
I agree. Okay. That's so funny.
Oh my god.
All right, now that we're sobbing on camera. Ooh.
My mascara's running.
This was good. Ooh, needed that. But they do get into the people making money off of this fear in the book, The Anatomy Murders, that I keep talking about, and I've talked about in several other episodes of this podcast. Because again, it was like the class disparity of like the
Mhm.
wealthy could afford these crazy contraptions that did we really need? So truth is, most of the time you really just needed somebody to watch over your grave for a few days to make sure like the body had time to decay, because they weren't embalming the bodies and it wouldn't be of use to anybody.
Mhm.
So doctoral candidate Megan Springate, who authored the book Coffin Hardware in 19th Century America.
I'm gonna read this book too.
Santa. I know this episode comes out after Christmas, but we're recording it before. Oh, that reminds me, we've got to do something after. So Megan Springate, who wrote this amazing book, I'm assuming, is similarly unconvinced that Coffin Torpedoes made it out of the patent catalogs. According to Springate, these news clippings probably reference general explosive placed around graves, which is still an insane
Mhm.
concept. So now these were just like homemade bombs people were making?
Homemade pipe bombs.
Oh my god. Rather than like inventions specified, like specifically used for the funeral industry. Other aspects of the mortuary industry in the US would have also deterred body snatching, including burial sealed shipping crates as makeshift vaults and other hidden locking mechanisms for the casket lids and use of cast iron coffins. And all of these have been recovered archaeologically. I'm guessing coffin torpedoes have not been recovered
There's no
archaeologically.
evidence.
There's no archaeological evidence, which is so disappointing. But maybe there are, and maybe
we
you
just haven't
shouldn't
found them.
mess with people's graves because you don't know.
Maybe we
aim-
did use them and they're all just exploded
They
now.
all just exploded and went away.
There is no evidence. They blew up the evidence.
They blew up all the evidence. I did read, so there were, again, in the Anatomy Murders book, there were certain grave robbers who tried to find ways around some of these like contraptions that just basically guarded the body. They had to like only cut into the top of the coffin and had to like slide the body out through like a very small opening. But like people were determined because med schools were paying for these for cadavers.
And it was typically poor families, not families, but like poor individuals who would do the grave robbing.
Like
so they needed the money.
But like not justifying broken hair at all. But yeah, they didn't realize they would get paid so their first body that they brought to the Edinburgh Medical School wasn't somebody that they killed. They had a boarding house where people stayed, and one of their tenants passed away. And they didn't realize that legally the body was unclaimed. Back then, legally, they were allowed to just get rid of this body however they saw fit. I don't think you can do that now. This was the 1800s in Scotland, but they thought it was a whole sneaky thing that they were sneaking the body out in the middle of the night to sell to the med school. But it was like back then that was a perfectly legal transaction. You could just sell a body like that, like,
which is so crazy to think about.
But they didn't realize that was a thing, and so they thought, but they didn't realize they would get paid so much.
So then they started
for it.
Like,
then they started like trying to find other ways to do it, and then they started killing people, which was no good.
So by the early 20th century, the controversy around resurrection men and the body trade had died down considerably, though not due to, quote, grave ghouls going out with a bang.
I hate so grave robbers were called resurrection men. And I feel like
that's a nice word.
That sounds too nice.
That sounds too like, oh, they're so nice and they're doing such a great thing.
Yeah, resurrection men. That sounds
like a really bad movie. Resurrection Men. Do that on Cult Pop.
Review the made up movie that Jess just made up. I love it.
So anatomy laws gave med schools access to bodies of the poor in most states by 1913, curbing the black market for cadavers, and they also improved refrigeration technology, which allowed corpses to be stored and preserved in medical institutions. So there was less of a need for like the premium newly deceased bodies.
Right. Yeah.
And microbiology advances in the surgical field and early x-rays relegated anatomical dissection to the sidelines of medical intervention. And anatomy continued to be taught in med schools, but it primarily served as an introductory course rather than the central focus in their like med school curriculum.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. I feel like in med schools today, like anatomy is a huge part in what you're learning and everything else kind of comes secondary. Yeah. Am I wrong in saying that?
I've never been to med school.
I don't know.
The grad school I went to was a med school, and I worked in the anatomy lab in it. But yeah, the anatomy.
You were closer to the med school track than me.
No, duh.
I'm not saying you should go to med school.
No, I don't want to.
Our choices are perfectly fine how we are.
Thank you. We're working through it on the podcast. Yeah.
My end goal is what I'm doing now.
Yes. A podcast.
Podcast about my trauma.
Yeah, but in the anatomy lab that I taught or TA'd in, I didn't teach the whole lab, but I was a teaching assistant. I was assisting, it was like first year grad students. So I was like, I took the anatomy course my first year of grad school, and then my second year I helped be a teaching assistant in that. But then there were other med students also, I wasn't of the med students. There were med students that were also TAs. But yeah, I think the med school also used the anatomy lab. But yeah, I feel like it was primarily like the pre-med course. This was last episode, but we were talking about Dexter and how he was pre-med and then stopped being pre-med to work in forensics, and I'm just realizing that's exactly what I did.
So what you're saying is you're Dexter.
But I always wanted to work in forensics. I just wasn't sure if I wanted to fully be a forensic pathologist or a pathologist assistant, and I am very happy as a pathologist assistant.
Me too.
Thank you. Me too. Yeah, we're great. We're great.
We're great. Everything's fine.
Sorry, it's side rails.
All right. So, though there is little archaeological evidence of grave torpedoes' uses, these inventions provide a peculiar window for the curiosity, horror, and unease that anatomical practices inspired among the 19th century society. It's a lost world, really. We don't know too much about it other than like what's written in books.
That's why I'm fascinated by it.
I know.
Because like everything's just so unhinged. And like
In every way possible.
like Coffin Torpedoes might have been a thing, might have just been a patent catalog thing, but like people believed it. It was
Yeah. It caused like mass hysteria.
wild.
So part of all of this was like the politics of death, the importance of people attached to having a decent burial or a decent burial, and the strong meanings they attached to narratives of death and the industry that arose in service of that incorporated casket and mausoleum manufacture. They like became much more like prominent.
Yeah.
We see a lot more of them today. But also like funerary clothes and like little trinkets that you would leave in the grave, hearses, gravestones, postmortem photography, and bombing post Civil War.
Yeah. We should do an episode on postmortem photography.
That's also like an unhinged thing.
Yeah, not like the postmortem photography like
that
we do.
No.
It's like
they would like pose the dead body
yes,
and take pictures
they would
with their families.
Sometimes they would just be like a family photo, but one of the people was dead.
But you didn't know that.
And like, didn't people have to like sit still for photos for a very long time?
Yeah, because you had to like wait a really long time for the flash and for it to develop.
Yeah, that could be a whole episode, and that was real. There's evidence of it.
Let's do that for our next mini. Stay tuned for postmortem photography.
Postmortem photography. So then there's the tinkerer culture, people making goofy devices for perceived need or non-need. So addressing a Coffin Torpedo patent, Scientific American boasted, quote, "In consequence of the increasing number of graveyard desecrations, the genius of the inventor has been incited to devise means of their defeat." This also just a crazy, like, badass saying. Like, that, like, my tombstone's gonna just be so tall with all these ridiculous,
so many weird quotes,
and I'm not even gonna be there because I don't want to be buried. I just want a tombstone. So this clipping was reprinted in various local publications during the late 1870s and the early 1880s. Some accounts of Coffin Torpedoes and the tinkerers who thought them up take note of their impracticality. The Pittsburgh Dispatch dedicated part of an 1890 roundup of rattle brain ideas to cemetery explosives, locating them within the larger culture of the invention and its esoteric, ill-conceived byproducts. There's a premium on novelty and ingenuity. People in their barns have their tools and they're making stuff, but sometimes they make brilliant inventions and sometimes they make fortunes and sometimes they just make stupid things. And the Coffin Torpedo is clearly one of the brilliant inventions. Not a stupid idea.
Definitely not a stupid idea.
It's a stupid idea. But I love it. Occasionally, they also make good punchlines. The joke column of an 1882 Montana paper described the detonation of, quote, "one of the patent Ohio grave torpedoes." And the device was being tested on a mule. No. Aw.
No, it's fine.
At the point of explosion, the animal picked up a single hoof and continued. I didn't finish reading the sentence.
So they basically were just like, grave torpedoes don't work.
They don't work. Damn.
It's all made up.
Damn. But
I still love talking about it. Like, this is my new fascination.
But somebody on January 17th, 1881 did get blown up.
But did they, or was this like a conspiracy and somebody was just making this up to scare everybody else?
Atlas Obscura, did you lie to us? Did
somebody back in 1881 lie?
Probably. They were lying back then.
Yeah. Who can believe them? The big we.
The big they were lying back then. Oh my gosh, this is an insane topic to dive into.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
Everything Victorian era medicine is so much fun to talk about.
Yes.
It's so unhinged.
But going off topic now, but staying on topic with our minis. Our last mini, we played Morbid Curiosity with Dylan. And
such a fun time.
We had such a fun time, but
talking about death, what death impacted us the most.
We accidentally reminded Dylan that Betty White died. And
Make up for it.
To make up for it, an early Christmas present, we wanted Betty White to be with Dylan. So we got him a Betty White Christmas ornament.
Oh,
Merry
my
Christmas,
God.
Dylan.
Merry Christmas, Dylan.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. I have a little, me and my girlfriend have a little Christmas tree in our apartment, and that's going right on it.
Amazing.
Yes.
She is flipping the bird.
Oh, I love that. I know that exact photo you're talking about.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thank
It
you
is
so
from-
much.
It's from the Etsy shop Lynn and Lucille.
Thank you,
Anybody
Lynn.
else
Thank you,
wants their
Lucille.
own.
She should be on everyone's tree.
I'm gonna put her. Oh no, Betty!
Oh my God.
Again!
I can't go through this again.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to our chaotic mini episode. If you want us to cover any other insane Victorian era medical practices, inventions, please let us know. I love deep diving into all things like this.
Yeah, I'll never get tired of it.
No, so please give us ideas, topics. Shoot us a DM on @Inside The Morgue on Instagram, or comment on our YouTube videos or any of our Instagram posts. Just hit us up. Let us know what you want to talk about. We love this.
You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, catch us on YouTube over at YUNKJunk's page.
Yeah. And we'll catch you next time for a brand new dissection.
Bye.
Bye.
YUNKJunk!